Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody today to StreamYard. We're going to be talking about preparing for mediation and family dispute resolution in this webinar with David Robertson. Hi, David. How are you?
Hi. Good. Thanks, Bridget. I'm great.
Fantastic. So we'll just wait a couple of moments to give others the opportunity to join us. So we'll just start in a minute or so. Okay, actually less than a minute. So we'll start now. So my name is Bridget Jackson. I am the founder of Equalexes and co-founder of Equal Group Holdings. I'm a divorce coach, mediator, and qualified lawyer. In this webinar, we're going to be talking about the options for family dispute resolution, the importance of preparing for mediation, how to maintain a positive co-parenting relationship, and much, much more. Our guest today is an experienced professional with a diverse background in teaching, probation, and counselling. Originally, you're from Montreal, Canada, aren't you, David?
Yes, I am.
And you qualified as a New Zealand secondary school teacher in 1968, and you've taught in various countries, including New Zealand, Australia, and England. You've had a decade of experience as a probation officer, specialising in working with long-term prisoners, individuals with addiction issues, and residential rehab facilities. And you set up in private practice as a counsellor and specialist court report writer in 1984. So since then, since 1986, you've trained as a mediator, and you've been working specifically as a contracted family court mediator since 2004, including for fairway resolution. And in addition to your mediating, you continue to supervise family lawyers and other mediators, and also work as a counsellor with all individuals, organisations, and agencies. I don't know how you do it all, David. We are really excited to have you with us today to share your wealth and your knowledge and experience with us all. So welcome, David. We're delighted to have you here.
Thanks, Bridget.
So first of all, David, tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, you rattled off a whole lot of things there, which I guess the first thing it does is it makes me quite old. But like a good wine, you see. I guess that probably I didn't, when I graduated university at 20 years old, I didn't know what to do. And so I spent the next 10 years mainly traveling the world. The last 4 with my wife of 53 years. Yeah. So, I guess that that I've been able to accumulate a whole lot of things that you talked about before. I think probably I see myself as a bit of a storyteller. I love being a golfer, which I still play twice a week to a reasonably okay standard. And I think that probably when I did my mediation training in 1986, probably, I kind of became a born-again mediator. I'd been a counselor and I'd worked with hardcore prisoners, set up an organization called the Salisbury Street Foundation in 1979, which is still running, the only one in the country working at this kind of level. But I guess that since I did the mediation training in 1986, my counseling practice, my supervision practice, I sort of use a mediation model with all of that work. So I guess that I was doing some toting up a couple of years ago for some organization who wanted to know what experience I had had. And I think I counted up approximately 45,000 hours of counseling.
Wow.
And about 25,000 hours of mediation and preparation for mediation hours. So I didn't think there was that many hours in a lifetime, but so I guess that one of the things that I've that I've learned is that when you have a skill base and when you have the desire to continue doing it, you just keep doing it. And I hope to be doing this for a number of years yet.
Brilliant. Well, that's, you are a real asset in terms of what you do and the experiences that you've had. Can you explain the process of family dispute resolution and what you do in that regard?
Yeah, well, I guess the first thing about family dispute resolution is that it's voluntary. People only come into it when they choose to come into it. I think about 30% of people still like to use the court as their first port of call, and then from a practical point of view, from an expense point of view, and maybe even from a desire sometimes to actually come to some sort of consensual understandings. This is the process that dispute resolution gives to people. It gives people an opportunity to shape up their own parenting plans, their own agreements, things that they will mutually agree that they won't do. So I guess that it probably most people still don't know what mediation is. I still have people say to me, "I don't want to get into meditation," and so I think that probably the best way to explain it is that it is a facilitated conversation with people who are going through probably some of the most difficult stages of their lives. When people get married or develop long-term de facto relationships, whatever you want to call them, people do that without foreseeing that someday down the line that they will separate. And so when they separate, all the hopes and dreams and desires kind of go with it. And people have to reframe, reorganize, rejig the way they live their lives. And a divorce coach or a divorce mediator can help people do that without too much blood on the tracks.
Yeah, which is absolutely, it's the unknown for people, and they need someone who can guide them in terms of that, in terms of the best way positively forward. So what are some of the common issues that are addressed in mediation specific to separation?
Oh gosh. I guess people come into separation disappointed, sometimes feeling that they're a failure, feeling that they misjudged the person that they were in this relationship with. Some people are angry, some people are sad, some people are full of revenge, some people are feeling they've been cut off from their families. I think that I guess with men, when I'm preparing men for mediation, I'm trying to ascertain their levels of understanding of what responsibility for their children actually is, because in most families, the mothers have done all that work. And so I guess trying to get men to understand that they have to step up and they have to do things differently, perhaps with a partner, an ex-partner who they don't like very much, is quite a big step. And I guess for a lot of mothers, just trying to ascertain their preparedness to let the ex-partners, the husbands, ex-husbands, back into a co-parenting, a co-sharing relationship.
And that could be difficult, can't it, David? Because I think that for a start, a lot of people do think, obviously with their emotions running high, is that they can control someone else's behaviours and actions in terms of this process, and the fact that I think that's quite a commonality that I see with clients. But unfortunately, you can only be responsible for your own actions and behaviours and the way that you respond to the inaction, etc.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, and that's a big leap for a lot of people, actually taking responsibility for their own behavior. Because how many times do we hear, see what you made me do? I've spent my whole life trying to make you happy at the expense of what? At the expense of myself. So there's quite a minefield to navigate your way through there, and some people are more ready to do that than others.
Yeah, and do you see it from your perspective with predominantly the men that, because by and large, it's mostly the women who have managed the caregiving, that they feel fear because they're worried about not potentially getting access to their children with, because in some cases you find that the caregiver is being a bit of a gatekeeper in terms of access, etc.
Yeah, sure. All of that. I think that one of the things that a lot of men don't understand is how fearful they are of a lot of their emotions. And I think that that they probably see the mothers as the gatekeepers and don't really have a lot of the skills to deal with that. And so they end up trying to be very pushy and dominant. You're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do the other thing. And because maybe that's the way the marriage worked, I don't know. But I try to encourage men especially, and women of course, but men especially, that separation is a different experience than parenting within a marriage. They're quite different things. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
So in terms of, you've done a lot of work and you continue to do a lot of work in the space of helping couples, individuals prepare for mediation as it relates to their separations, to make it as efficient as possible and successful as possible. Tell us more about what preparing for mediation is and what you do for clients.
Yeah, well, I guess that that when people are in a marriage, they behave in a certain way, and they get to know that their spouse behaves in a certain way, and people navigate their way around that. I guess when a separation occurs, both the mothers and the fathers are kind of on their own. And so one of the things when I'm preparing people to mediate, I try to ascertain what they have a tendency to argue about. And people will argue about a whole range of things. But what I'm trying to prepare people to understand is that when they go into a mediation, that the mediator will probably want to discuss and find some resolution to, if possible, all the things that they argue about, so that some protocols can be established, so that they will not have to continue functioning, communicating in separation, pretty much the way they did within the marriage. And I guess that probably we've all said to various clients that if you go into a mediation using the same tactics and same strategies that you did in communicating with your partner when you were together, and you hope that you'll get a different result, then you're going to be found out to be wrong.
And it's that saying, isn't it? Do the same thing, you get the same outcomes.
Every time. every time. A lot of people don't understand that, probably because they've never thought of it, and they can't figure out why their old tactics don't work anymore.
And also that managing their emotions, isn't it? That's very, very difficult for them to undertake that during this process. Yeah.
Absolutely, because there's still all the residue of power that is in the process of being dismantled. The whole power balance is out of balance compared to what it was, and so people are having to develop new strategies and skills for old issues, for dealing with old issues. And
which could be 10 years, 20 years they've been around for example. Hence why they're in the situation they're in.
Absolutely. I did a mediation a number of years ago with a couple of 85-year-olds in a rest home.
Wow.
And I think they'd been married for 62 years or something. And it was mind-boggling, really. But, they were just not able to communicate with each other anymore. And so they wanted to separate, but they couldn't because they were tied into a contract with the rest home that said that they had to stay together.
Wow.
That's a warning for anybody who wants to deal with old people.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there has been a spike in the number of, we call it the grey divorce, don't we? There has been an increase in terms of that. And that's a really specific area in terms of the support that they need.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really is.
I think that, if people are going to be at whatever age, if they're going to be in a position where they're having to renew a contract, then that can happen at any age. And there's a lot of people that separate in their 70s.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
There's a lot of
them. Yeah. Now, from your perspective, what sort of scenarios in terms of individuals or couples where mediation is just not the right avenue for them?
Well, I think that I can probably, when I'm doing a preparation for a mediation, I can get a pretty good idea of how easy or difficult it's going to be. There will be some people who are just going to be so entrenched in their own ideology, in their own belief of what happened, that they just can't get beyond that. I guess that what I'm always trying to encourage people to do is to put some faith in the coach or the mediator or the facilitator who is going to be able to help you navigate new territory, territory where you will feel uncomfortable, areas where you feel that you were so right and the other party is so wrong that you don't know how you're going to be able to get the facilitator to understand that.
Yeah, we call it moving from being stuck in your story to the business of divorce.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. And I think that most people have probably come into mediation or a facilitation of some sort with the idea that they're doing some things wrong, or that some things are wrong that they don't seem to quite be able to figure out how to do it differently. And so they're hoping that the facilitator will help them do that. I think that when I'm preparing, I try to prepare people. I like to do it in two parts. Prior to them meeting the mediator for the initial meeting with the mediator, and I like to have a second session with them after they have had an opportunity to talk to the mediator. I have a number of things that I like to get them to check out with the mediator, because one thing about mediators, and I don't know, in Fairway there's a couple of hundred mediators. I've done over 3,000 mediations. I have never, ever, ever seen another mediator work.
Wow.
We in training, we watch mediators learning how to work, but actually doing a bona fide mediation, no mediator has ever seen another mediator work.
Well, that's something they could do. Yeah.
Which is amazing because lawyers see each other working all the time. But mediators, no, you come into your mediation room, it's all, nice and quiet. Nobody else is watching, and nobody's critiquing you. You're on your own there. And I guess this is why supervision is important, because, we get stuck sometimes. We are capable of doing both great work and not so great work. And it's an opportunity to download. I've got a couple of supervisors that I'm always wanting to talk about things, because I guess I'm always trying to learn how to get better. And when I've done something poorly or haven't been able to make the breakthroughs that I think that are possible, I'm always wanting to try and find out if it was something that I did wrong, or if it was something that I overlooked, or did I just get the timing a little bit wrong? There's all kinds of possibilities, and no matter how experienced we are, I always look at every mediation as a brand new job, and every person's a brand new person, and they only bear a scant resemblance to the last person I talked to.
So, what is your role as a neutral third-party mediator in the dispute, whether it relates to obviously care of the children or the relationship property assets?
Well, I guess the first thing, as a neutral third party, it's really important to stay neutral. We talk a lot these days in training and various podcasts you see, as people are talking increasingly about bias, unconscious bias, and I think that, we're just people, and as people, and you know me enough, Bridget, to know that I'm never short of an opinion. And I know you well enough to know that you're not short of an opinion either. And I think that that's good. But when we're sitting in the mediator's chair or in the preparing for mediator's chair, we have to give the parties the understanding that we are neutral, that we're not taking sides. And when I'm preparing people, I hear what they're wanting to achieve, and I talk to them about various strategies that they might employ. And I also discuss with them various things that they would be very wise not to employ. Sometimes people are very anxious. They have struggled being able to face the other party. I try to encourage those people to maybe consider themselves in a business meeting where you're there conducting business. You don't cry, you don't yell, you don't talk over the other person, because if you do that in a business meeting, nobody's going to want to do business with you. So, but everybody comes with a unique set of circumstances, and I guess that we have to be aware of that. And what I'm always trying to do is give parties enough information and confidence to be able to engage in conversation, facilitated conversation with that other party. That's my task, and it's pretty simple, really. But that doesn't suggest the parties themselves are simple, because they're oftentimes complex. But I'm always trying to break it down into its more simplistic components.
So, thinking back to mediations that you've undertaken and the clients haven't prepared for the mediation, what does that look like? What does the process look like in terms of that and the outcomes that you may or may not get?
Well, I think if a party comes into a mediation where they have not talked to a PFM person, and the other party has talked to a PFM person, I think that the party who hasn't is at somewhat of a disadvantage because they are going to only bring forward their preconceived thoughts and ideas. And they think that their point of view is the correct point of view, and they're not going to be dissuaded. I think that probably 90% of the people that I've talked to in a preparation for mediation um, um, situation is that they have started the conversation with a very clear idea of what they wanted to do, how they wanted to do it, and by the end of 3/4 of an hour or an hour talking to me, they have oftentimes changed their approach, changed their thinking style, because they can see the way they were intuitively going to do it was not going to get them anywhere near the sort of result that they would be hoping for. Yeah. That's why I'm always encouraging mediators. If one party is signed up for doing a PFM and the other hasn't, I try to get the mediators to give the one who hasn't signed up a bit of information as to why it might be in their best interest to do that. But in the final analysis, it's up to the individuals. They'll do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, that's right. So, David, how do you help couples navigate particularly the emotional and financial aspects of divorce during the process? Those are the real, particularly, and as it relates, obviously, to the kids.
Well, I try to stay as far away from the financial stuff as I possibly can because I'm a financial disaster area myself. But I have a sort of a numerical dyslexia. I just don't deal well. Never have, and so I don't tend to go anywhere where I'm overly anxious and incompetent, really. With the emotional side, I guess that what I understand that the emotions of a separation are very high, and well, they should be, because as I said earlier, people have come into this with their hopes and dreams somewhat shattered. And sometimes they blame themselves, sometimes they're quick to blame the other party. But I guess that what I'm always trying to encourage people to do is not to suppress their emotions, but temper them in some way in which they can be constructive, used constructively. And I guess that I have a tendency probably to encourage the parents to try to see it to try to see it from their children's point of view. Because one of the things that I'm aware of, and most of us who work in this field are aware of, is that our children have been observing us virtually since they were taking their first breath. They've watched us. They've listened to us. They've seen us. They've seen us argue. They've seen us love. They've seen us do the whole range of things. And I guess that I'm always trying to get the children's perspective clearly into the picture with the parties. When you behave like this, Dad, how do you think your children are going to respond to that? When you call their mother a horrible, miserable bitch, who's ruined my life, what do you think your children think when they hear that? Because that's their mother that you're talking about. And conversely, when a mother is talking to, that miserable bastard who you call your father, that's their dad that you're talking about. And so I'm always encouraging people to keep in mind that their children are just as much caught up in this divorce as they are. Their children they've got a point of view about it. Sometimes they take sides. Most often they don't. But that they're very much affected by the behavior and the ongoing post-separation behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. And the biggest thing, and as I tell all my clients, is do not disparage your ex in front of the children.
Yeah, absolutely not. Because if you do that, you will wear it.
Yeah, absolutely. Or expect your children to support you as you are going through this process. It's not for them to support you. You need to be there to reassure them and nurture them. So, David, what are your 2 top tips for people as they go through this process or are contemplating going through mediation, separation?
Talk to someone like yourself, a divorce coach, someone who has some experience in this, whether it's a personal or a theoretical experience, doesn't matter. But I think that separation for most people is a very lonely process. Yes, they talk with their friends. Yes, they talk with their families, but you're in it by yourself. And I think that we try to help them understand the perils. We try to help them understand that they can forge a parenting plan that's going to be respectful, that's going to be helpful for their children. It's going to be helpful for the parents transitioning from being a married person or in a long time relationship person to a separated person, where they're not going to be able to be reliant on the other parent for support, for information, or for anything. So, a separated parent who is wanting to still continue to be a responsible parent has to be prepared to delve into that in as much detail as they are possibly able to do. I encourage people to read a bit. I encourage people to talk to people like yourself and your colleagues. I encourage people to speak to a mental health professional, a counselor, a mediator, a coach, probably before they talk to their lawyer. But I also encourage them to speak with a lawyer so that they understand the legal ramifications of what they might be wanting to do.
Yeah.
I think that that one of the things that people need to do is they need to be prepared to move into this next phase of their life, and of course it's all brand new to them. They got used to being married, and now they have to get used to being separated. And it's a different gig, and I think that that's.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, David, thank you very much for your time and your sage advice to all of those people who are listening or who will be listening. I'm sure that it's been incredibly useful information and advice today. And the ending slide is telling people how they can contact you. But thank you very much once again for joining us, and it's been a really wonderful to talk to you today.
Hey, well, it's great to see you, Bridget, and anybody else who's watching or listening. Just continue to do good work, and the thing is, enjoy what you do. It's difficult. It's emotionally draining, but it's some of the best work that we can do, and just enjoy it. And and get good supervision, because it's really draining on you.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Okay. Good. We're done. Good.
Oh, great. It's still live. It's still live at the minute, David. We'll just wait till the But stay on the line. Stay on the
Okay.
line. Wait till it get yeah, we'll that it's still live at the moment.